Hi friends, welcome to Law Chat with Girija. I'm Girija Patel, your host for Law Chat, and I am so excited for you to join us today. I have some amazing guests on Law Chat, and they're here to share their experiences and entrepreneurial journey with us, and through their storytelling, mentorship with us, because that is the whole point. We are all entrepreneurs and we're all on a journey, and learning from one another is the best way for us to move forward in our journey as well. And I have amazing guests who are so willing and ready to share their stories with us, their challenges and their victories and their achievements, and also their mindset. I just can't wait to share that with you, and I also just can't wait to have that conversation with them. It's such a privilege to have each and every one of them here with us today, and also it's such a privilege to have you listening in and tuning in. So let's dive in to Law Chat with Girija.
Hi friends, welcome to Law Chat. Have you looked at your brand and thought about your brand and feel like, that's interesting, but then you actually are perceiving your brand to be something else? I know I've done that, and I know a lot of people do that also. And today we have literally the brand expert with us today, Kelsea Buddo. She takes so many intentional steps and makes you take so many intentional steps in developing your brand identity and the brand that you're not only looking for today, but also 5 years down the lane. And I am just so excited to have her here today. She is also a brand and show it website designer for colorful, creative entrepreneurs and even lawyers like me. So welcome, Kelsea. I'm so happy to finally have you with us today. You've had a pretty exciting journey during 2020. You were pregnant, you had a baby, a cute little boy. And I know it's been super busy, but I'm so excited to finally have you on with us today so we can finally chat about you, your journey, and how amazing you are. Welcome.
You're so sweet. Yes, 2020 was quite the journey for everyone. We had a lot of personal things happening, but I'm excited. I know we've been waiting to get this on the calendar for a while.
We have. So tell me, did you always do brand designing, or were you doing something else before all of this fell into your life?
Yeah, so I actually, after graduating college, I did not major in design to start. I actually majored in journalism, so creative writing and literature with a journalism emphasis. So I ended up moving to Birmingham for a fellowship with Southern Living magazine, actually. So that's where I started my career, which is so fun. And in that process, working at the magazine, I was obviously exposed to a lot of design. And I found myself kind of sneaking over to the art department to look at what the designers were doing. I found it more interesting than the writing that I was sitting there trying to do. So that was kind of my first foray into design. And fast forward a couple of years, I worked in corporate marketing and PR for Kinder Scott, another large corporation. Worked for them for about 4 years before finally taking the dive to learn how to design. So my husband actually bought me a computer, and I signed up for some Photoshop classes and started just testing the waters a little bit, and honestly spending all of my nights and weekends on design work just for fun. And then eventually it just kind of trickled into a business. I had friends reach out for design work, and ended up leaving my job about a month after I officially formed Kindly by Kelsea, which you actually formed my LLC for me. So
I did. I remember, so you were in Houston at that time when you formed your business. Yeah. I want to rewind a little bit though. I think it's so cool that when you worked at Southern Living magazine, I truly love that magazine. It just brings all the happy feels. Yes. You're right. Design. I would love to design for them. Not that I have the ability to do that, but I mean, I whatever, but it's so cool. And so did you start designing there, or you just kind of got exposure there?
No, I didn't start designing. Those designers are, pros, jump right out of the gate. They usually have a specialization in magazine publishing, which is its own sort of design field. But I was exposed to a lot of the programs for the first time. Even though I was a liberal arts major, I didn't take any design courses in college. So I really had zero knowledge of the products that I use day in and day out now. Mm-hmm. So they really just kind of gave me a little bit of insight into how they work, what makes for good design. So I was able to shadow in that way, which is really helpful.
And I think that's a really important point that you just talked about. And that's that a lot of times we graduate with certain degrees, but then our journey just takes us to a different industry altogether. And I think you are such a testament to that in the sense where you're like, don't give up, just keep pursuing it and consistently keep getting experience. just dabbling and not being scared of that. Because I think like a lot of times it's like, if I wanted to be a web designer today, I'd be like, oh gosh, I just don't even know where to begin. And so where did, after Kendra Scott, because you weren't doing web designing for them, were you? And
Nope.
so at Kendra Scott, which is also such a great organization and, very creative organization too, just like, so you already had that creativity in you. So between Kendra Scott and starting your business, I know you were like, I was doing Photoshop on the weekends, but what were some of the ways that you really made yourself feel more confident also and gave yourself courage?
Yeah. So honestly, at Kendra Scott, you're right. It was definitely a creative job. I was in charge of event planning and marketing. And in that event planning sort of industry, I met a lot of other creatives in Houston. That's actually how I found the Rising Tide Society, was through Kendra Scott. So I was automatically exposed to all of these other creatives who were just kind of doing their thing. And I think watching other people in the industry chase after those dreams and chase after those businesses that they were starting really kind of gave me the confidence, like, okay, if they can do it, I can also do it, even though I have no knowledge of what I'm doing. And that's something that I've learned along the way. I'm sure you have too. Being a creative business owner, or just a business owner in general, is a lot of trial and error and a lot of falling down and picking yourself back up in different scenarios. So exposure to those different business owners certainly gave me a lot of the confidence I needed to just kind of take that leap.
Yeah, and I know we met at Rising Tide also. I think that's where we first met as well. And
Yes.
It was like an instant connection. I just loved your energy. I love the amount of love and passion you pour into your clients' work. And I can also see how you probably poured that in when you were figuring out graphic designing and designing in general, brand designing, all of that. So I know that I did your LLC, which was so exciting. And from there, when you started, where did your journey take you after that?
Yeah, so once I formed my LLC and took the leap of faith to officially form Kindly by Kelsea, I really honestly reached out to a couple of friends that I knew, like realtors and things like that I knew might need some personal branding done. So those friends, thank goodness for them, they took a leap of faith on me. And I ended up doing their branding for the first time. And I found through that branding was really my sweet spot, because design can take on so many different forms, right? Like there's collateral design, again, there's like magazine design, all different things, but branding really utilized a lot of the expertise that I had taken from my jobs at Kendra, and even the public relations agency I worked at in between Southern Living and there. So I took a lot of those sort of foundational strategy things that I'd learned and applied it with design to kind of create this branding, right? That's honestly one thing that I think makes my studio, my agency a little bit different, is that we do have this expertise in fields other than design. My junior designer, Molly, she's my one and only official team member and employee. She's kind of the same way. She comes from a communications background. So we're both self-taught designers. And I think that says there's a lot to be said for that, right? Like design in itself is really beautiful and looks aesthetically pleasing. But when it comes to branding, you're really wanting to apply strategy as well and make sure that you're formulating a brand that actually stands out in the market, speaks to the ideal client. So I'm really thankful from that standpoint that I was able to implement that and find my niche, so to speak, after starting. And honestly, business just kind of took off. So after we formed that LLC, about a month later, I put in my notice at Kendra and went full time. I can remember driving on I-10 actually in Houston, calling my husband and being like, so today I turned in my notice. And he was like, I'm sorry, what?
Oh my God, he didn't know?
No, he didn't know.
Oh,
so, that was probably like a terrible move on my end, but it thankfully worked out. And we've been chugging along ever since. That was in 2018. And here we are, 2021, just thriving. So, yeah.
Can you believe that? It's been so many years since that. So I love that, one, your husband didn't know. And two, did you have a conversation with him? Because what I really want to know is, what was the process of really taking that leap from having a full-time secure job, secure money coming in, consistent, to, okay, this is great, I'm going to now start my own business?
Yeah. So I am one of those people who's sort of all in or nothing. And I have a really hard time, or I was struggling with juggling Kindly with Kendra. I just honestly wasn't giving either one my full attention. And I know a lot of business owners who have side hustles probably struggle with that, especially when you're more passionate about one, right? Like I was really getting into Kindly and loving serving my clients, but it was hard to do my job well at the same time. So I did have a discussion with him in terms of, I think this is on the horizon. I believe I told him I wanted to do it in August, and this took place in June. So it was 2 months earlier than what I told him. It was just one of those days at Kendra where I found myself just kind of sitting there uninspired. And I just had gotten to a point where I wasn't really enjoying myself. And I think, again, I wasn't serving that company well by being a half-hearted employee, right? So it was honestly just time. And thankfully, my husband was supportive and very nervous, but very supportive. So yeah, we made that leap. And again, I'm just thankful it paid off. I worked really hard that first month to acquire clients and make sure that I had something to work on. I wasn't just going to be twiddling my thumbs that first month of business. But
so let's talk about that first month of business. What were some of the things that you did to acquire clients? Because now you're in this whole new industry. And so what did you do to create authority and then also to get those clients to walk in through your door?
Absolutely. So I did a couple of things. The first was I did a lot of in-person networking. So I reached out to other creatives in Houston and set up coffee dates with them. I also, again, got really involved in Rising Tide Society. The group in Houston is amazing in particular. So I was really thankful for that. It's a large group. So I was active in those gatherings. And then lastly, social media, honestly. Back in 2018, Instagram was a little different than it is now. And we weren't quite battling the algorithm that we do now. And I'm thankful for that. But I connected with a lot of people online. I think in person probably paid off the most for me. So just really putting myself out there, again, reaching out to people I didn't know for coffee dates. And then later on in that year, a couple months later, I actually attended the Creative at Heart conference. And that was excellent just to kind of meet people and network a little bit more and get more exposure to what the creative industry potential was, right? So I was new in the industry, didn't quite know what passive income was and email funnels and all of those fun things that we all know about now. So that was another kind of growing stepping stone for me, for sure.
And you have literally mentioned some of the most amazing networking communities and supportive communities. Like Rising Tide is fantastic. If you have one, if you're listening and you have one, you've never been into your town, Google it. Find it on Facebook, it's there, and go to the next meeting, whether it's virtual or in person. And then, of course, Creative at Heart, Kat's amazing. And I have, I've been in her mastermind group, and everything that, she touches is just so full of love and passion. And so it just makes you feel just so great to be part of it too. And
yes.
This is amazing. So from there, I love that, you really hustled. Like you did not just sit there and say, okay, let's see who's coming next. So you really went out, you put yourself out there. Were those moments of vulnerability? Were they moments where you were scared, but you're like, I still got to do this?
Absolutely. I was 100% faking it till I make it, down to everything. Like even the design portion, to be honest, at that point, I was still learning. Like I was still taking classes while I'm working with clients. And through that, again, I think my strategy side was a little different, but through that, I really worked to refine my client process. I mean, I know you walked through my client process way in the very beginning. You were one of my very first clients. So I'm admitting this to you now, but I didn't know what I was doing quite much as I do now. And I think walking through, refining that client process a lot, making sure that I am touching my clients in the best way possible, supporting them in the best way possible, and really guiding them through this branding process was a game changer. So investing that time and refining helped me get to the point where I'm no longer faking it till I make it. But I think that's, again, just part of being a business owner. Like I said earlier, sometimes you fall down, you got to pick yourself back up. And that's what makes for resiliency is, having the guts to do that again, to fail again, right?
Completely agree with you. I think, honestly, like even when I first started, especially my own personal practice, it was just like, you're nervous. You're second guessing yourself, even though you might just know it. And it's really something you can just a click away or a phone call away to find out, for somebody who is trying new things right now or is venturing into something and is kind of like hesitant, but has had a little bit of experience or enough. Don't be scared to ask questions, and don't be scared to tell your client, hey, listen, this is a great question, but I want to confirm. I'm going to come back to you with the answer. And I think a lot of times you're totally perfectionist. You're very passionate, but you're also very detail oriented. And I know that your type A personality definitely shines through your work. But I think that also, even for me, that can be a detriment because sometimes we're like, We're not going to ask anybody questions because we know everything. And I think for those who are starting new businesses or, doing a side hustle and trying to shift in, that lean into your network, lean into the people, and also lean into your vulnerability because I'm sure the other person understands it.
You are so right. That perfectionist tendency can be both a blessing and a curse, right? But I think sometimes we have to admit that we don't know the answer. We don't know the route to get to our destination. And that's, again, where having that network and reaching out to people for those coffee dates and all of that can be so helpful, because then you have people around you who are in this industry and understand what it's like to be a small business owner, primarily online, especially. That can help you and relate to you and give you advice when you need it. Because I know if you're anything like me, I'll ask my husband or some of my best friends questions and they look at me like I'm cross-eyed. They have no idea, right? So I think having those people on your side in your, in the creative industry, in the small business industry is so helpful.
I agree. And not knowing an answer does not reflect competency. It just means that you're like, I'm going to figure this out. Because what shines also in anybody's business is the human touch. It is the interactions that you're giving to your clients and to your community when you're interacting with them. Like, how good is it, or how stoic is it, or,
Yes.
That makes
I'm
sense.
also a firm believer in continuing education. Like, I think if you feel like you know everything or you know how to do everything, you're not growing. Your business is going to stay stagnant where it is. So be intentional about continuing that education process, whether it's signing up for a course, attending a conference, joining a mastermind. All of those things are so helpful in the long run, and really will help you grow and stretch and learn, and also help you uncover those mistakes that you were making that you may not have realized you were making. So
yeah, I completely agree. I think I'm a perpetual learner, serial learner, whatever you want to call it. And I love learning because I'do feel things change too. Like technology changes.
Oh my gosh, every day.
Things are changing all the time.
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately. And they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now, back to our awesome conversation.
So I love that, you really put yourself out there and you were committed to moving forward in this dream that you had. And so from there now, you have really cultivated your business and you have a really amazing repertoire of clients under your belt as well. So tell me, what is the process? Like, what is branding to you? And how, when somebody is trying to think about branding, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about in their business?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question. What is branding to me? Honestly, your brand is the interpretation of others, in my opinion, like what others see and feel when they interact with your business or with yourself. Because I think as solopreneurs, we have a personal brand that we carry, right? So we're not just focused on our business brand. There's also this personal brand element. But yeah, it's the way that they interact. It's the way that they feel when they encounter your work. And branding is not just design, right? Like, it's photography, it's copy, it's all the things that make up a brand. So on the design side, in terms of process, one thing that we do that I find to be really helpful for not just our studio, but also our clients, we have a really intense discovery phase, is what I call it. So when a client onboards with me, the first thing I'll do is send them a brand discovery questionnaire that is far and above your typical branding questionnaire, in my opinion. And that's because we get a little bit deeper with the sort of strategy that we apply. So for instance, I know everyone thinks about their ideal client or customer that they want to serve. That's a big sort of buzzword in the branding world. But when you're talking about your client at a surface level, so for instance, where do they like to shop, right? Like that gives me a little bit of info on them, but not really. It doesn't tell me what motivates them, what drives them. So we would kind of reframe that question to be something along the lines of, what brands do they wish they could wear? Because you may be walking around wearing Target products, which is great. We all love Target, right? But you may wish that you're dripping in Chanel. And so that tells me a lot more about who you are and what you're drawn to, and what sort of brands you admire, than something more surface level like the previous question. So our questionnaire is really in depth. It's very lengthy. It talks about brand goals, business goals, all of that. At the same time, I also get clients on a collaborative Pinterest board, and that's kind of where the visual inspiration comes about. I can see a lot about what they're inspired by, and then I go in and add what I think their clients are inspired by to kind of marry those two things. Because the other thing is, myself as a business agency or branding agency focused on other small, creative online businesses, my approach to branding is a lot different than the agency that, Pepsi uses, for instance, right? They're thinking at a different level because they have a mass audience. Whereas when I'm working with small business owners, I have to consider who that person is too, right? So, if we're working on your brand, I want to know what you love, what you hate. I don't want you to have a brand that's covered in orange if that's your least favorite color, So I really believe that branding is this full package of your likes, your dislikes, your ideal client, what they're drawn to, and your overall interpretation and presentation in the market. Hopefully that answers it. That was kind of a long-winded answer, but
no, that was it's perfect. So if there is somebody that is out there looking to rebrand or looking to really just figure out if this is the right step, what would be some like quick, easy tips that you could give them when they're kind of evaluating their own business and brand?
For sure. I think doing a business audit is so important before you reach out to a designer, because sometimes you're honestly not ready for one, and that's okay. But as far as knowing when you might be, typically some items to look at are your business model. Has it changed since you last established your brand? So number one, if you started out selling, pink tutus and now you sell, I don't know, something totally different, plants, whatever, looking around my office clearly, then, you obviously will need a brand to reflect that new offering or that new customer base. So that's the first thing. The second thing is your brand covered in trends, right? So if your brand is dripping in, watercolor, calligraphy, all these things that are beautiful in their own right, but they are trendy at times, that may be a sign that you might need to rebrand or step into something more timeless. If you are a trend forward brand, maybe looking at current trends as opposed to previous trends is important. And then the last thing is looking at your brand suite as a whole. So a lot of times people enter a rebrand because they don't have enough assets, right? Like they have one logo and a color palette that's just not functioning well for them. So again, a part of our process, we never design just a logo. You get a full branding suite, which includes multiple logos, a full color palette, typography, all the things, so that you're walking away with a robust brand asset and portfolio. Especially when it comes to colors, I've found that people will just arbitrarily choose colors that they really like, and they find that those colors aren't functional together. So they're trying to create graphics and they're like, wait a minute, this red and green does not look good together, So that's part of our process too, is making sure that you have a functional palette that's going to serve you well when you're making things on your own. So I really believe in equipping our clients and, any designer that you work with. I think it's important that they equip you to use the materials that they've created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Functional palette is very important.
Yes.
Even
yes.
your like the way the logo is made and all that stuff, it's very important for it to be functional, and where it also aesthetically looks really good on letterheads or a newsletter, just things like that.
Yeah. People don't always realize that having different logo variations is super important. There are times where your logo's too small to really be legible. So in that case, you might need an icon logo or something like that. That makes it feel really professional and not like people are having to squint to make out the words on your logo or whatever. So having a robust, again, logo portfolio is really important.
Yeah, that is so important. That's such great advice, all of your tips that you just gave. Now, throughout this journey, you've obviously had a lot of experience now. And when you look back, what are some of the challenges that you had and how did you overcome them?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, it's crazy because I've only been in business for 3 years, but we've seen pretty massive growth in that 3 years. I've encountered a lot of different challenges, both legal and not legal. I think honestly, my biggest challenge and battle has been burnout. I exploded so quickly that I ended up with a client load that was just overwhelming. And in that process, I also realized that I was charging too low. So I was not making enough money for the time I was spending away from my family, away from my friends, and, just life, right, to work on these things. So that was my biggest challenge. And I know that's a common one in the creative industry, is just finding that balance of how much work is too much work. How do you know what to price? How do you know how to scale so that you're not burned out? So I think, for me, that looks like bringing on a team member. Actually, 2 team members. Technically, I do have a VA too. So passing off some of that responsibility was big, and then evaluating my pricing for that. Another big challenge, navigating maternity leave as an entrepreneur was interesting. So I just went through that. It's fresh on the brain, but having to physically be like, all right, I'm going to set aside 3 months just to spend with my newborn baby, and I'm not going to work during that time. What does that look like from a financial perspective, from a client workload? Even things like who's going to answer my email, So navigating those challenges was interesting and required a lot of forward planning. I'd be lying if I didn't say I hopped on my email a couple of times during that leave.
I feel like I know you did. And I feel like I know you did show up even like the week of.
I'm like, hey guys, I'm here. It's hard, your business is your baby. It's hard to like fully step away. And that's something I'm still learning and, juggling today. But those are some recent challenges. And then I have some legal challenges. I don't know if you want to dive into
that in a second. But I like that you brought up burnout. And I also like that you brought up maternity leave. Burnout is so true. And it can also cause you to not love your business anymore or love what you do anymore, because you get so overwhelmed and you're not looking forward to having those client conversations also, because you feel behind, or you feel like you're stressed because you're not meeting the deadlines you've placed for yourself.
Yep.
So, what are some of the ways, I know aside from increasing your prices, taking in fewer clients, are there any other things that you did to reduce that burnout feel and to kind of make it go away?
Yeah. So I actually have a bookkeeper who talked me through this a little bit when we were looking at my different packages. And she asked me, she's like, okay, you're booking a lot of this one package. Does it bring you joy? And I was like, honestly, no. Like that particular package for me, it's a lot of the like collateral design. That's just not my favorite thing in the world. I love the brand strategy and initial development, and even the website portion I love, but it's things like, business cards that aren't my favorite to design. So we kind of brainstormed, all right, if you don't enjoy that, here are your options. You can bring on someone to work on those items for you, right? So you don't have to. You can remove them altogether from your offerings, or you can send those people to a different designer altogether, right? Like if that's something that they really need and it's not, your favorite thing in business and it is burning you out, then maybe you need to pass it off. And so we kind of evaluated which option would be best for me. So that was a huge piece of advice, because I think a lot of times burnout stems from work that you don't enjoy, right? Aside from like too much work and undercharging, that's kind of the third place that I found. So I'd recommend outsourcing. Yeah.
Love that. Marie Kondo, the services that you're doing. Like,
truly.
Does it bring you joy? What a great advice that your bookkeeper gave you. Love that.
I know. And she's brilliant.
Seriously, so brilliant. Like it seems so seamless. Either you do this, or this. Duh. I love it. And then, going to maternity leave, I think it's so important because a lot of times, entrepreneurs, women, we start the business because we're passionate about it, but then also it gives us flexibility. And I think that's the beauty also, is that there is flexibility, and you can actually step into work, pop in when you feel comfortable, and pop out when you're like, this is just not working right now, especially during, newborn baby time. And so I think it's okay. It's okay if you popped in, even though you're like, I think corporate life, corporate things, it's a different story. They have to do certain things and you have to follow certain things just to fit into that protocol. But with your own business, you can define your own protocol.
Yes. Yeah. So it's going to look different for everyone. For me, like you said, I am super type A. So I did check in to make sure things were still running smoothly. But I'm also, I think a key for that was communicating well in advance. Like I included my maternity leave dates in my email signature. So every single person I corresponded with saw like, okay, Kelsey's about to be out, or she's out right now. I set up auto responses on my email, all the little things that will hopefully let people know, like, I'm not fully available right now. If you don't hear from me, here's why. So those kind of put my mind at ease a little bit, but it was nice to like have that flexibility and be able to determine how long I needed. If I needed more, I could have taken it, but some people don't need as much. And so it's nice to have that and not be restricted by like the corporate regulations, I guess.
Yeah. And I love your over communication. I think it serves you and your business really well. So it's a good
Communication is key, especially
thing.
in the digital age.
Yeah.
I mean, people sometimes don't read through a full email, or that, there's just, the more you can reiterate things, the better. So that way they don't feel like they're caught off guard. And that just goes back to a good client experience too, right? If you're over communicating, usually your client feels well served and well taken care of.
Client experience is huge. So let's talk a little bit about the legal challenges that you faced. And I mean, this is Law Chat, so we kind of dabble into that. So what were some of the legal challenges that you had?
Oh my gosh, I've had quite a few, honestly, and you've been around to help me with some of them. So the first one that I encountered, I think, was in 2019. I actually went on Pinterest and saw someone was selling my designs on Etsy. I don't know if you remember this, but I went to Etsy. It was some person overseas that had quite literally taken a design that I made and started selling it themselves, changed the colors, but it was the strangest thing. I just popped on and I was like, that looks really familiar. It's just a different color. So that was my first like real legal hurdle. I think we ended up sending them a message, a cease and desist, just to say, hey, you don't own these, you can't sell them. They didn't respond, but they took the listing down. But that was scary. That was like my first encounter, was realizing, okay, my work is public. People see it on social media. They see it on my website. They can easily take it. And with the internet, it's hard to track that down, right? So to be honest with you, that's a huge fear I have, just kind of walking around every day, is that one of my sweet clients who paid for this custom brand is going to get on Pinterest and see that it's for sale. So, I mean, who knows what could happen? It's really terrifying. And unfortunately, I don't know that there's too much that you can do with the internet like that. So,
well, that's a huge fear, because a lot of times when people are coming to brand themselves, they're doing custom design so they can own it. They can go in and trademark it if they want. And there's not a copy of somebody else's things or similar to somebody else's things. So you're right. That can be a poor reflection. But at the same time, if, you do see people, I mean, it's very common actually for people outside of, it's usually happening with people who are not in America. So they're sitting in a different country and they're like, oh, this is a great picture. Let's just change the colors around and slap it on our thing, because they can recreate it, because that's what they do. And now they're infringing on your copyright and your trademark. And so I think what you did is great. You sent the cease and desist letter and they took it down. But if they don't take it down, Etsy, Pinterest, all these platforms have a DMCA takedown process. And, go into their system, go into how to do that process and follow it. You don't even have to consult an attorney necessarily, because they already have those forms written out for you.
That's great. Yeah, it's definitely a fear. And
there is some recourse, but it can be tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And again, it's, one thing for it to be my work that's copied, but it's another thing when I see a client's logo or brand that I made be copied, because that's, I'm fearful for them too. I don't want their brand to be infringed that way. So that was my first big legal challenge.
Well, I love that. And I think it's very common what you're saying. It's not uncommon. And so the best step is to have that cease and desist letter template sitting right in your, little handy toolkit. And then the next process would be the DMCA takedown if they don't listen. So
true. That's great advice.
Usually that cease and desist letter is pretty effective. So I usually tell people, if you know that if you can contact them, just send them a DM, send them an email, whichever way is the best way to contact them. Tell them, hey, it's mine. You need to take it down. And if they don't do it, then you send the formal letter and then you go on to the next level.
Yes. Something similar actually happened about a year ago as well. There were two other designers involved, but another designer in Houston and I realized that someone was stealing our Instagram captions, which was interesting. So the education-based Instagram captions, regarding how to choose your colors, all of those things, someone was literally taking them word for word and promoting them on her own Instagram account. So we didn't send a formal cease and desist in that instance, but we screenshot everything, sent her an email and said, hey, we noticed this. You can see clearly where we wrote this and then you wrote this. So even something like that, I felt like was effective in that. Just communicating, letting people know that you see it. You don't necessarily have to be threatening right off the bat, but that alone will hopefully put them back in their place, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's great. Those are great tactics that you used. So that's so
Yeah.
wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Now, I know that, you really stand out in the work that you do, but how else are you positioning yourself in your industry? And are you doing something different that is kind of changing it?
Yeah, so actually today I am launching what's called the Kindly Kit. So I've been working with clients, other entrepreneurs on their branding, but what I've found is that I actually have a pretty big audience of other designers who want to know more about my process, who want to know how I handle client relationships, how I handle client experience. And there's not a ton of education out there, especially people willing to be an open book. I think a lot of times, people hold their process close to the vest, which is fine. But I've decided to just kind of open up for these other designers to see my process, see my templates, and run with them in their own right. So that launched today. I'm really excited about it. It's for other designers. And so that's kind of, I guess, pushing me into a new education space almost, which I'm really looking forward to embracing and hopefully coming out with a couple of other courses and things like that, even for non-designers. There's just such a need. We live in such a visual world, between social media and websites, that it's important. Like, design is more important than you realize. It speaks more to your subconscious than you realize. And so I think those education pieces for designers and for non-designers are going to be really exciting new ventures for us this year.
Well, congratulations on your new launch. It is May 19th. So your launch is today on May 19th.
Yes.
Now, this will probably air after today, but it's available for everybody. And I'll also have the link in the show notes so that they can reach out and, get on board with your what is it called?
Called the Kindly Kit.
Kindly Kit. Yes. I love
it.
And I also, I wanted to ask you just really quickly. It's like Canva's out. I love Canva. It makes me feel like I'm a designer, but I also know that there's limitations with Canva. And so when you were saying, I'm going to be putting something out there for other people who are not designers. So I'm looking forward to that because I love things like Canva. It's easy. I don't have to feel like I'm breaking my bank every single time I need to get something. Plus I can do it on my own really quickly if it's already in there. And so what is your opinion on Canva?
Yeah, so a lot of designers hate Canva. To be honest with you, I don't use it all that often unless a client needs a template. So if they need social media templates or a PDF or something that they feel comfortable editing down the road, we will design in Canva. It's a great tool. It's a great tool if you're not a designer. I don't have any beef with it. I will caution people that you don't own anything that you make on Canva. So just know that, like logos and things like that, you're not able to copyright or trademark if they're made on Canva. So just be careful with what you're creating in that, right? I do think from a non-designer perspective, this course that I envision rolling out one day is going to talk a lot about design principles, because while Canva is great and they have a lot of really helpful templates, if you're ever working on something custom, it can be difficult to know how much negative space you need around your text or how far apart you should space your letters or, little things like that. Mm-hmm. And so this eventual product I want to create will basically be walking through those basic design principles so that anybody can take them and apply them on Canva or whatever design platform they're using.
Oh, that's fantastic. And of course, you're an expert. Canva just makes us feel like an expert, but we're not.
It's a great tool. It really is. I mean, where would we be without it? Think of all the...
Seriously.
It's so hard.
It was such a game changer, I think, for non-designers. So.
Yes.
Well, I've had so much fun talking to you. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your stories, your journey with us, and your advice. I thank you so much for that. But before we hop off, I always like to ask a few questions, fun questions and stuff. But my number one question is though, what is your anchor when things are just not going your way? What kind of holds you steady and strong?
Yeah, so I have a worship playlist that's particularly for when I'm having a bad day. So some of my favorite songs, you can find it on my Spotify. Just search Kelsea Buddo. So that's something that I love if I'm having a bad day. Even today when I was driving to the office on launch day, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm going to listen to some worship music just to keep me centered on what matters. But aside from that, I mean, obviously family and friends, right? I have my little baby boy now who just really puts everything in perspective, to be honest. It's amazing how a child can do that for you. The things that I used to stress about and worry about kind of seem insignificant now when I look at him. So yeah, those are kind of my anchors when I'm having a bad day or need, again, perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I love all of that. And what is some of your favorite biz tools or resources that you use?
Oh gosh, from a design standpoint or just in general?
General design, whatever. I think general, like.
Okay. Yeah. So I use HoneyBook every day. HoneyBook is my CRM system where I send invoices and contracts, all the things. I would die without it. So that's my number one business tool. We also use Asana internally to communicate and assign tasks to one another within my own team. I actually don't use that with clients. I found that it can be a little overwhelming to onboard clients there and communicate there. So I don't use it with clients. As far as design tools, obviously love the Adobe suite. Creative Market is great if you're looking for basic Canva templates and stuff like that. You can find a lot of good stuff on there. And then there's actually a Chrome extension that I use all the time. It's called What Font. So basically, if you add this extension to your computer and you're on a website and you see a font that you really like, you can click that icon and it'll tell you what the font is.
That is from a
design, so from a design standpoint, that's always just fun for me to look at.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. And if somebody wants to contact you, get a hold of you, get onto the Kindly kit, how do they do that? Where can they reach you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm always posting my latest work and things like that over there. And that's just Kindly by Kelsea, Kelsea. I spell my name a little different. And then my website is kindlybykelsea.com. You can find a link to the Kindly kit if you're a designer. And again, that's just a kit walking you through all of our templates and everything that we use in our client process. Super robust, super informative, meant to be a simple resource for you to implement right away. But those are where you can find me.
Yay. Well, everything's going to be in the show notes. So they're going to have easy access to you. And again, I loved having you here. I love chatting with you. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. It was such a joy. I hope it was helpful for people. And you're just doing amazing things with this podcast. And I'm an honor to be a guest.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girija. I love these kind of stories and conversations where we can be real, honest, and open, and having fun at the same time. I hope you are inspired and motivated to keep doing the amazing work you are doing. If this is something that gave you all those feels and then some, truly motivated and inspired for you, you can show your love in all or one of these ways. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this video with your community and tell them about it, or share with somebody that can benefit from it. I look forward to seeing you next time on another episode of Law Chat, and until then, keep moving forward. Bye.